What's going on, Mr. Mark?
How you doing, Ms. Leo?
How are you, brother?
I'm good, man. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for coming. It's been a couple of a couple of weeks, maybe a month. Last time I saw you.
Yeah, probably. A few weeks. Been busy with the baby, newest addition to the family. So it's been a few weeks since we've been coming up this way.
That's right. That's right. You were telling me about you just had a new grandchild. What's his name? What's her name? Her name. What is
her name is Lilith Monroe. So
Lilith. Monroe's her middle name?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
My daughter's a big Marilyn Monroe fan. So, and then Lilith, we just call her Lil or Lily.
Lilith. Isn't that like a very old name?
It is. It's like an ancient, almost like a Gothic type name. And my daughter is big into Halloween stuff too. So her and her other half went by Lilith, but everybody calls her Lil or Lily.
Right. I think if I'm not mistaken, it has to do with, there is some theories. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know exactly the history of it, but it was supposed to be like the first woman.
Yes,
right?
I read about it being like the first
something
woman.
like that.
Yes,
something right.
Exactly.
So I mean, like I said, I'm not very good with the history of that particular name, but I remember hearing something about it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's cool, man. So how do you feel about that? How many grandkids do you have now?
Oh gosh, I mean, 8. And then when Heidi got married, our middle daughter, she inherited 2, so that's 9 grandkids now.
9 grandkids.
We're gonna need a town hall for Christmas.
That is a lot. My dad has what? My dad, when I say he has 12 or 13.
Oh my goodness.
That's a lot of kids.
And the middle daughter is hoping that they can have another one.
Oh, really?
With her and Matt.
How's that coming along?
I think they're not in a rush. They have other priorities, but if it happens, great. If not, she's content with the 2 that they have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And this is Nina, right?
That's Heidi.
Oh, that's Heidi.
Yeah.
Heidi.
And then Nina had a boy 3 years ago. She's done having kids.
Yeah. How old are the twins now?
Twins are 12. And then the oldest one, Gavin, is 21.
My God.
So, I don't think I told you. You went into the Marine Corps.
No, you did tell me.
Okay.
You did tell me. I think last time you told me was that he was from Camp Pendleton?
No? Yeah, he got stationed here.
Right.
So I got to go visit him as command, and he's hoping to do a deployment here soon.
Right on.
So
right on.
Following Pop-Pop's footsteps.
How much of an influence do you have on him because of that?
I would say quite a bit, because he's doing the same occupation as when I was active.
Okay.
So I was a combat engineer, so I was started out on the construction and bridging, and then moved into the demolition side. And the unit that he's with, I spent a number of years with also.
Oh, really?
So when I went to go see him, their commanding officer wanted to get a picture of 2 different generations in front of the unit sign there.
That is pretty cool.
It is.
How do you feel about that, actually, when he?
It's good. He'll put out some pictures, and post things and whatnot, and he'll look at me for guidance and how do I do this and can I do that, and it's like, yeah, and so I give him guidance, but I also have to remind him too that the Marine Corps has really changed a lot from when I went into now. I went in 42 years ago, so
wow.
Long 81, so 42. 42 years ago when I went in, my first day in. So I have to remember that it's not the same.
It's not the same in what sense?
No.
In what sense do you feel like it?
They have a little bit more liberties, and then how they address, I guess the easiest example is when I went through, it was yes sir, no sir in my basic training in boot camp. And now when they go through boot camp and they do an event called the Crucible, then they address their drill instructors by their rank. It's yes sergeant, no sergeant, yes staff sergeant. Kind of like train like you fight, like they do out in the Fleet Marine Force, you know. But when I was in, it was yes sir, no sir, all the way up to graduation. And then you go out to the Fleet Marine Force, and a sergeant tells you to do something. You say yes sir, and he's like, I'm not an officer. It's like, sorry, habit.
Wow.
So.
Wow. That is pretty cool, man. So now, I remember when I first met you, you were teaching, right?
Yeah.
You were doing teaching. In where were you teaching at?
I was in Oceanside. Well, when we first met, I was at Desert Hot Springs out by Palm Springs, and I did 2 years out there.
Okay.
And then I moved to Oceanside.
What year did you move to Oceanside?
Being closer to the beach, vice the desert.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So an opportunity came. We had a house out in the Temecula area, and we wanted to move closer to the coastline. So we purchased something in San Clemente and
What year was this?
That was in 2010 that we moved out here from the desert. And then, so I did just over 2 years at that first school. And then I went to El Camino High School in Oceanside. And I did 11 years there.
Wow.
So.
Wow. So you're in what were you teaching? What was your?
It was Marine Corps ROTC, so I was still wearing a uniform, still doing the grooming standards for the Marine Corps. But you teach leadership, leadership education, physical fitness, career paths. So the nice thing was a lot of people thought that, well, I don't want my son or daughter to go into military. No. We're teaching them leadership, and we also teach them how to get in college and other careers. I don't care if you're, I would tell my students, I don't care if you're going to be, work at a donut shop. I don't care if you're going to go into military, 2-year college, 4-year college. You want to be a brain surgeon, we'll help you get there. The biggest thing is teach them the leadership skills so they have the discipline to do it.
Gotcha. So okay, so is it a high school?
Yeah. So I had 9th through 12th grade.
And what you were teaching was part of the curriculum, like teaching Spanish, English, math,
exactly,
geography, and stuff like that.
It was considered as an elective. And so when they joined my class, if they were in my regular class, they had an elective credit. But they also got a PE credit, too, because we were big on physical fitness. We would do more on physical fitness than what the PE classes do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because like the PE classes, at the end of the semester, the students have to run a mile. Mine were running 3 miles.
Every day?
Just about. So we make it fun, but we give them a variety of, working on the workouts, and I liked it because it kept me in check at the time too, being that I retired from the Marine Corps. And it's like, okay, I can still have something to keep me in check and working out. They liked it. I do, even inclement weather, the PE class would go in the gym and just hang out. We're going in the classroom, move all the tables to the side, and we're going to do the insanity workout.
Really? So those kids came out of school when they were taking your class in shape.
Oh yeah. I keep in touch with a lot of my students to this day. I have one in particular that she's competed with the American Samoan Olympic team. She's trying to go qualify for the U.S. Olympics.
Really?
She went to college at University of Houston. She threw shot put, and she was a large girl, and going through my class for 4 years, she lost a substantial amount of weight, got stronger, got more disciplined, and next thing you know, she has aspirations of going into the Marine Corps to be an officer.
Wow.
But she's also broken at her community college and at the university records that were 28 years old.
Get out of here.
For doing shot put.
And that is what?
It's a big steel ball just
Oh, is that what it's called? Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So she broke the record for University of Houston for female shot put throw. That was a 28-year-old record.
That is so
and
cool,
she's just doing great things, And, I have some of my former students that are in the Marine Corps now. Right up the street from where I work at Camp Pendleton.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
So I don't remember ever asking that class that you taught, but now that you tell me that it was leadership, I mean, how important that is for any for any kid at that age, right?
It is. I would also bring in not just me teaching everything, but I would bring in guest speakers from the Fashion Institute, for example. I'd bring in instructors from the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandise, and we'd give the kids a class on how to participate in a job interview. They're teenagers; they don't know anything about this, so they would get a class on that, and then I would give them a class on how to dress for a job interview. And I took a collection of ties, just all different colored ties, and I made every one of my students learn 3 different knots on how to tie a tie. And for example, even the girls were asking, "Hey, sir, why do I have to learn how to tie a tie? I'm not going to wear a tie." I'm like, because the first thing I do when I put a tie on is I go to my wife, and she knows how to adjust it. She knows what to look for, you know?
Right.
So I said, you're going to learn how to do it. And then they would get tested because we'd do a formal dinner on the base, and all the ladies had to wear everyone had, guys and gals alike, professional attire. Guys are going to wear a suit, coat and tie. Ladies, you're going to wear a cocktail dress or a pantsuit, something that you would do a job interview with. And so it's little things like that, you know, even small things like table etiquette that they can use when they get out, how to fill out a college application. So that's where it all starts, you know. Anything that helps them career, you know. Everybody says, well, we're trying to get you ready for college. No, I'm wanting to get you career ready. Like I said, I don't care what the career is. You can be at a donut shop. We're going to make you career ready. So
Right. It's, I mean, you say that it's as small as this or that, but when a kid that may not have the, and I talked to this about with my other friend that he was here last time. And we were talking about how important it is to have parents, right, that are able to educate you and to guide you and to tell you, do this, do that.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody's as lucky as we are, right?
Right.
That we have that ability. I mean, not that ability, but we have that how can we call it, that luck, or that we have our parents with us that can teach us, a dad and a mom, completely different ways of teaching, but going to school and having that class that can teach, once again, you mentioned small.
Yeah.
However, further in their lives, when they are adults, they're always gonna look back
Exactly.
and see how important, how much you and your teachings in those classes shape them to
the role it had
to
get them where they're at. I a number of times said, I wish I had me as a teacher when I was back in high school. They didn't have junior ROTC when I was a kid, you know, back in any of the schools in my neighborhood, and I wish they did, because I would definitely pursued it, to have somebody just take you in and work with you like that, you know. I mean, I don't know of any other program out of the 3 high schools that I worked at that do anything like a simple thing like, how do you tie a tie, get ready for a job interview, you know. I mean, kids would ask me nowadays, you know, when I was doing this, or back then when I was doing that, hey sir, if I go in for a job interview and I'm wearing these clothes, can I wear a watch? Yeah, you can. What kind of watch do I wear? And I'll let them know,
right.
you know.
Right.
Well, you don't want your silicone band, you know, sports watch. You want a bracelet type or a leather band, depends on what you're wearing, you know. And do I make my shoes match my tie or my shirt? And, you know, right. So nobody's telling them that, you know. Unfortunately, a lot of moms and dads, when they go to work in the mornings and everything, they don't have time for that, or they don't think about that. They're thinking education, math, science, social science, history, English, things like that. And it's like, okay, when I graduate and I get on the other side of the fence, I know how to count, I know how to talk, I know how to read. What else?
Right.
You know, I'm the what else.
Right. Right.
So
that's great. That's great. So then you taught 11 years in Oceanside. And then after that, I remember that you guys moved to Arizona for a couple of years during COVID.
Yeah. Whoops.
How did that go?
The move went good. Being raised in Southern California all my life, the move was good. We moved into the Phoenix area, and a job was ready for me. I didn't even have to do a job interview for a high school there. And I blessed my wife because she decided to go with the gamble and do it. So we sold our place in beautiful San Clemente, and we moved to Phoenix of all places. And
okay, whose idea was it?
It was mine. It was mine. I'll have to admit, it was my idea. Like I said, I wanted to get out. My wife is a Philly girl, so when she came to San Clemente, she fell in love with the beach. You know how much she loves the beach coming up here, Newport now.
Right.
So it was my idea. I wanted to get away from it, and probably not the best idea, but so we went out there and we built a house. I had a job locked on from the day I got there, so no problem on, a break in income or anything else.
Right.
At the same time, I was able to file for retirement from the California school system, so that gave me a second retirement, so that was nice.
Right.
I go out there and I get this job with the school. We built a beautiful house. We lived in it for 15 months, and then she said, take me back to paradise, which is San Clemente. So we get to come back and be around everybody that we know again and be closer to the coast.
So, and you were doing the exact same thing over there. You were also on that same leadership classes?
Yeah, I did it at a high school in Tolleson. The school district was 6 high schools, and 3 of the 6 had an ROTC program. So I took on the lead at that school in Tolleson near Phoenix, and I did that for a year and a half. I thought I was going to be there longer, but some things changed.
Yeah.
So
I mean, how can you compare? What is it, Phoenix, right? You
said
Phoenix to San Clemente.
Yeah, and I didn't mind the heat because I in my last year of high school, when I was in high school, I spent in Bakersfield, so I was used to the heat there. My times in the Marine Corps, 29 Palms, Iraq, Kuwait, I'm used to the heat. I don't mind the heat. I'll golf when it's 115 outside. I don't care. Sunscreen and watering them good,
Good.
And so I didn't mind. And so I guess going to Phoenix, it was a golfer's paradise because you could drive no more than 45 minutes and I could play a different course every weekend of the year and not repeat it. But for my wife, it was like, yeah, she's not a golfer. So so my attitude changed. When she wanted to come back, I have to admit that I spent so many years with her and she was following me. We lived in San Clemente, we moved to Scripps, we moved to Temecula, we moved back to she was following my military path. And so, I retired at the rank of a master sergeant. So I would tell everybody, my wife spent years following master sergeant, Mark. And then it's like, I think it's time for the master sergeant to follow the missus.
Right.
And do what she wants to do.
Right.
So here we are.
That's great. So you guys decide to move back then, and now you had already retired from the school situation over here. Mm-hmm. And what are you doing now? Now,
go figure, I can't get away from the Marine Corps because, I do 27 years active duty, and then I do a combined total of almost 15 years as a ROTC instructor. And then I told her when I come back to California, we're not going to do ROTC. I'm going to give up the teenagers and find something where I'm working with adults. Right. And I ended up with a contract position. I applied while I was in Arizona for a contract position to teach Marines, go figure, I'm around the Marine Corps again, right. To teach them how to use the new Amphibious Combat Vehicle, what they call an ACV. Okay. It's taken place of the old track vehicle, the Amphibious Assault Vehicle, and the AAV. This one's all wheeled. Okay. So not being a former, what they call tracker, but they took on a gamble because being a master instructor in the military and then being a high school teacher, obviously I know how to teach.
Right.
So they hired me on to be an instructor for this new piece of combat equipment, and I just took the ball and ran with it.
Nice.
Pretty much. So
Nice.
I'm working around Marines. I don't have to keep the flat top, hair. Now I can do all this and the shaving and everything else. I can be me. But I'm still around I'll say the community, the family, because the Marine Corps has always been my extended family. So I'm just around the family that, in addition to my immediate family, that I love the most.
42 years, man.
Yeah, 42 years being around camouflage.
That's as much as I've been alive, bro.
I know.
That's as long as I have been alive. It's like, when you say 42 years, I'm like, holy shit, man. I was being born crying, and you're like, all right, I'm signing up to the Marines.
Yeah,
it's ready to do 100 push-ups and some pull-ups.
It's a hard pill to swallow because, like all the other instructors, even my boss, he did 30 years in the Marine Corps, and but he retired 3 years ago in 2000. And I was like, well, wait, when you went in the Marine Corps, that was 1990 then. He says, yeah. I said, San Diego? Yeah. Okay, I already had 9 years in the Marine Corps. I was a senior drill instructor there in San Diego when you went to start your recruit training. So hence I'm the old guy of the group, but I still tried to keep up with the younger.
Damn, man, that's crazy. That's crazy. If you throwing this question out there, like, if you weren't a Marine, what would you have chosen to be?
Oh my goodness.
Have you ever thought about that question?
I thought that when I got out of high school, I was just going to drive truck cross country, get in the wheel of a truck and drive cross country. I learned how to drive a truck with my dad when I moved up to Bakersfield. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's like even when I took my first driving test to get my driving license, I failed it. It's too stupid to make up a true story. But I failed. The guy had me go through the whole test, and then I failed. And it's like, well, wait a minute, why did I fail? And it was because of the way I backed up the car. And my dad walked over and said, you failed him, didn't you? It's like, yeah. He's like, he learned how to drive behind the wheel of a Peterbilt with a 40-foot trailer behind him.
Oh wow.
And hence there's no rear view mirror, there's no rear window, there's just the side mirrors, and I decided to back up a Chevy Chevette just using the side mirrors.
Did you forget that you have a rear view mirror?
Exactly. It was just habit. And so I failed my first driving test because of that, because of learning how to. So I figured when I got out of high school, I was going to just drive truck.
Right.
So, but then.
And then what happened? Like how the Marines came into play?
Well, I went to 4 different schools. I went to 4 different high schools. I got kicked out of 2 in the South Bay in the LA area when I lived with my mom. Moved up to Bakersfield, and at first they said, I don't have enough credits to graduate. So I went and worked with the Forestry Service. I was like, all right, the heck with school. I'm a senior. I'll figure it out. I'll do my time, maybe get my GED, and then drive truck. And my dad kept saying, you really need to get your diploma. Get your diploma at least. So I said, all right, I'll try it. And I ended up going back. I took a full schedule at my regular high school. I worked a part-time job 3 hours in the afternoon. And then at night went to another high school and took adult classes just so I can graduate with my class.
Right.
During the course of that, I realized I'm going to leave here with a 1.75 GPA at the most. That's not college bound, I don't even know if that's truck driving bound now that I think back at it, My mom joked around and go, Mark, come on, any monkey can drive a truck. Well, probably so, and that was the direction I was going, I think. And so I thought, military, they'll teach me a trade, whether it's one that I want or not. And I went straight to the recruiter for the Marine Corps.
When you decided to make that decision, did you ever think, oh, well, do I want to do like the Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, or do you
Others did. Others in my family thought that because I had been around, like, for example, I'd been around sailboats all my life since I was 8 years old. Okay. And so my mom thought if I was going to military, and her preference was maybe the Navy. I was big into shooting and weapons, so my dad thought maybe the Army. A glimpse, one of my brothers, I think it was, thought maybe the Air Force because I was taking classes at Northrop for aircraft mechanic. I took the Marine Corps because I knew that I remember hearing one time that all the services have basic training, but only the Marine Corps has boot camp. And I was like, huh. And so I went to the Marine Corps recruiter, and they're like, oh, yeah, you're under watch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 13 weeks. You know, you can't do anything without permission. I was like, cool.
Right.
So I was like, that's probably the discipline I need. Because when I got kicked out of the high schools, I was doing it because cutting class, broke a guy's nose.
A few.
Yeah. You know, and then, you know, because there was priorities. It was like biology or the beach. Biology or the beach. You know? and when I have to explain to my mom why I only have 7 absences in woodshop but 42 in biology, then,
Right,
you know.
Right.
So my dad came home one day, saw the Marine Corps paraphernalia all over the table. He's like, what's going on? I was like, I think that I could use the discipline. So I want to go in the Marine Corps.
All right.
And I remember him saying, well, you just took the first step of being a man. You know, I was like, cool. Never looked back. A week after graduation from high school, I went to boot camp and never looked back.
Really?
Yeah. My dad came to my graduation, and he asked me what I thought now that I had 3 months in the Marine Corps. I said, I want to be a drill instructor. I want to be the rank of gunny. He says, why gunny? I was like, that's just a cool rank to be called the gunny. You know? Somebody goes, hey, go see the gunny. It's like, yeah, come on. You know? And then I said I want to do at least 20 years. He's like, you figured that out in 3 months? I'm like, yeah. So move the clock forward. I was a gunny. I was getting promoted to master sergeant. I invited my dad, and he didn't know why. I invited him down. And he pinned on my new rank. And I said, you know what this is? I said, remember my goals? He's like, okay, yeah, you made mention of a drill instructor. I went, yeah, we did that. He said, and I said, you just took off gunny off of my collar. He goes, oh my gosh, one more to go, 20 years. I went, Dad, that was 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
So he was most pleased to hear that. So I met all the goals, and because I think everybody should have goals. So
how long did it take you? 20 years, you said?
I did just shy of 27 years in total.
Before you became a
master sergeant?
A master sergeant?
Yeah, I got master sergeant the same time, right at my 20-year mark.
Wow.
So, and truthfully, for my occupation, the time frame that I came in, that's about the norm. I'm actually, gunny's the norm. I was a little bit ahead of my peers.
What does gunny stands for?
Gunnery sergeant. So they just call it short, like gunny.
Gotcha.
A lot of history in the Marine Corps. So like a master sergeant, me being a master sergeant, some people would call me top, because at one time, a master sergeant was the top enlisted.
Okay.
And then when they brought in the other ranks above it, the term top stuck with the master sergeant. So sometimes senior officers and senior enlisteds will call a master sergeant top. So
okay,
I liked it.
Okay. And when it comes down to the rankings, how many more rankings are above?
I could have only gone one more. There was only on the enlisted, since I was enlisted side, I was a pay grade E8 and they only have 9. So if I was to get promoted, I would have been a master gunnery sergeant. But I chose to retire instead. You know, I had the opportunity, but after my 3 pumps in Iraq, I chose to retire.
Okay. So you said you did 3 trips to Iraq?
Yeah. At the start of the war, and then the start of the war, you know, being in Kuwait.
What was it, 94? No, wait. No, 88?
Oh, you're thinking Desert Storm.
No.
Desert Storm.
Is that the first trip that you did?
No, it was for the regular Iraq War in 2003. Desert Storm, I was in. I was on the East Coast stationed, and I had a combat replacement platoon, and I was 3 times I had to go get them ready to fly out. We'd go to the airstrip, stand by, getting ready to pump. get called back. And it was like, because it wasn't a long enough war. You figure it was like 30 days and it was and it was done.
Right.
It was quick because
were you like pumped to get there?
Man.
Were you like, ooh?
Yeah, I mean, I was, because I was leaving the drill field in San Diego. So I left being a drill instructor. I was going to the East Coast. And to be sure, I took some time off before going there, and I grabbed my dad, and I'm like, want to go to North Carolina? And he, what's in North Carolina? I said, my new command, but I want to see if I'm going to get deployed or not. And if so, I'm going to leave my wife in California. And we had this father-son trip, and we drove all the way to North Carolina, checked in with my command. Yep, you're going to deploy. Okay, I'll be back in about a week and a half. Drove all the way back. We were in North Carolina at the base there for a blazing 2 hours. I'm like, we just drove all the way across the country twice just to go to a place for 2 hours.
Wow.
and then came back, and I left my my wife in California, and then drove back out there. The unit I was going to left 2 days before I got there.
Oh.
So they put me with a different unit to get a combat replacement platoon ready. And I worked on that. And then after basically about 8 weeks of that, they were like, you can go ahead and stand down. So I was done with that, and I was able to come back across country and get my wife and bring her across.
And so the first time was 2003, you said?
Yeah.
So that was the
original war against Iraq. I went over to Kuwait, was in Kuwait for the to prepare for it. That was probably, up to that point, we're just training, doing things like in 29 Palms out in the middle of the desert to prepare for it. And then getting over there, I remember working with Major General Mattis, the same Mattis that was later became Secretary of Defense and all. Awesome guy to work with. But I remember him getting a brief, and he made mention about we're in range of Scud missiles. And he looked at the operations and the intelligence officer and says, I want them taken out. And long story short, within 2 hours, they were taken out. And I was like, all right, we're not training in 29 Palms anymore. This is the real deal.
Wow.
So, leading the front there with the 1st Marine Division was pretty wild.
Wow. So how long were you there? How long was your first trip?
That one there, I was there for a little over 9 months, and then came back. Then my second trip, I went back to Ramadi, a hot spot, to get ready for the Battle of Fallujah. I was only there on that one for a few months. And then my third trip, and the Ramadi one was in 2004. My third trip was in 2006, and I was there for 7 months on that one.
Okay.
So, and that was probably the game changer on what made me retire.
Really? What was that?
Marines just tired of doing memorial services, tired of seeing friends get injured or killed, tired of getting shot at. My second trip, I was getting sniped at in a helicopter. But the third trip, right before Christmas, one of our teams went out to disarm an IED, an improvised explosive device, and coming back, they hit one. And we lost 3 young, I say kids.
Wow.
They're 21, 22 years old, and here I am, close to, my 40s. Yeah. So, 2003, I was 40, so about 43 when this happened. And, I'm seeing these kids get blown up. And, I realized when I came back from my third tour, I had orders to go to a new command and get them ready, and they were going to go. And I was like, no, I'm lucky with 3. I may not be lucky with 4. I've had enough.
Right.
So
that's gotta be very stressful. Very
it is
stressing.
Yeah.
A lot of once, like you say, like people that you have shared time and experiences with. All of a sudden, they're no longer there. So, But out of all those three trips that you did,
Mm-hmm.
like which one was, like you said, the third one was the one that the most memorable, the one that you say like, that's it, I'm done. That what was that really got to you?
Yeah. I have, like, I keep a picture on my phone of the vehicle that got blown up that I had to bring back. I mean, it was in flames where we had to bring a crash fire rescue truck, with something that we used to put out flames on an aircraft to bring it out and cool it down before we can even bring it back to base. And if you figure, a fallen angel is in there. That's what we call Marines when they've deceased as fallen angels. When you have a fallen angel, that we got to get out of that thing. It's just not pretty, obviously. And like I said, memorial services and everything else, so I think your mind and even your body, with everything, all the stresses of combat deployment, even, and granted, I know there's other people that have been through and seen worse, God bless them, and come back in worse shape than me. But your body, and I'm sure they can attest to it, your body and mind tells you when it's enough.
When enough is enough.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, it happened, it comes to a point, I believe that even now, I'm 42, like, obviously I don't have the same way of thinking when I was in my 20s, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Exactly.
think the same way that I was in my 30s or 35, right?
Exactly.
So, and I imagine you in this case, having to go through all these experiences, where you get to a point where it's like, all right, I gotta do something different, and even your position, were you exposed to a lot of shootings and?
Oh yeah, my second tour. Like I said, flying the night that I was flying into Ramadi on my second tour, our helicopter was getting shot at while we were trying to land. So he swooped back up and then cranked out some rounds on the 50 cal machine gun to put their heads down. Went into the LZ hot. I got off the bird real quick because it was like at 2:00 in the morning, and it was on the old CH-46 helicopters. And kicker is that those type of helicopters, their signature of the blades when they're coming in to land, they put off so much static electricity, it looks like there's two hula hoops coming down, and like a sparkler.
Really?
Yeah, and so the snipers know, aim below it.
Really?
Yeah. So, yes. And then I got there, like I said, about 2:00 in the morning, quickly got off the aircraft. They left, got out of the area. I settled in. And then the very next day, our camp was mortared. They had Iraqis that were dropping mortar rounds into the camp. So I was out walking around and just finished visiting a buddy of mine, Sean, and had mortars coming in. We heard the explosions. All you got to do is just take cover, hit the deck. I was out in the open, like in the middle of a road, and so the only thing I can do is get by the curb of the road and bury my face in that curb, put my hands underneath my body, and then wait for it to subside. But then I noticed an explosion behind me, and it was in the compound where I was just visiting a friend of mine. And unfortunately, he didn't make it. Wow. So, and that was I was like, I haven't even been here 24 hours, and I've been sniped at, I've been mortared. It's
wow.
nuts, So, yeah. And then what they were doing was they were having mortars come into our camp because the Ramadi governor lived nearby, and it kept our heads down while the enemy was trying to kidnap the governor's son and daughter.
Wow. So
we couldn't react to help out. So yeah,
wow,
it's pretty crazy. And they were very, combat intel. You know, they're very good at making makeshift mortar launchers right out of the back of a pickup truck where they just have it armed, hook it up to a battery, it launches, they drive off. So it's hard to get the guys that do it.
Right,
So,
because it's like
yeah,
in and out.
everything's makeshift, real fast. Get it in, get it out, and we can't react. You know, we're too busy ducking.
Wow. So you say that situation when you talked about your friend, was it like your biggest turning point in your life? Was that the point where you were like, all right?
Yeah, I think it was it was a major turning point in my life. One of the things I think me personally that it did, I was always a person that was not afraid, but I never showed my emotions.
Okay.
You know, I just didn't do it. You know, I don't know if it's because of the way I was raised or just being in the Marine Corps, you know, like around family members. I was never one to really show my emotions. If I felt bad about something, I would grieve on my own. When there's time, just put it off. Not right now. Put it off when it's time. You know, the death in a family, whatever the case may be. That's what I would do. Where I would have other people in the family. You know, I can't watch this. I'm like, all right, I got it. You know, I'm good. And that one there though really brought it out to where it's okay to express your emotions, you know. And I think the biggest thing was probably my commanding officer at that time, because when this happened, and I was the operations chief for the unit. I was in the combat operations center. We were running it. We were taking care of everything. And then we had to go back out and get these guys and bring everything in and all. And when all said and done, I had a little room about the size of this room, right next door. That was where I stayed. And I went in there. It was like a mud hut, truthfully.
Right.
I went in there, closed the door, bolted it, and just sat in the dark. It was like, this is my time now. And all of a sudden I had a knock on the door, and it was, you know, my commanding officer. And I ignored it at first, and all of a sudden he says, "Top CO." I was like, okay. So I unlocked it. I just unlocked it and let him open it, and I went and sat back down. No words were spoken. And he came in, and he lit a cigar and opened up a cold one. We toasted him. We sat there, smoked a cigar, no words spoken. In silence. And then, you know, he said that if you want to talk ever, you know where I'm at.
Right.
I'm like, just nodded my head, and he walked out, you know.
Right.
And that was when I remember, that was probably the icing, even right now, that was probably, the icing on the cake that says it's okay, you know. So emotion-wise, and, you know, I guess I would always wear my emotions on my sleeve and everything. That was a big point in my life where it was like, it's okay,
right,
you know, to be that way.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so these were my brothers, you know, and
right.
so yeah, that was if I was to say turning points in my life, joining the Marine Corps was one. My experience in combat is another. My fantastic wife is another.
She's a beautiful woman.
Yes, she is. So.
She keeps you on your toes for sure.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for certain.
Yeah. Wow, man. That's great. That's great. I mean, you having your wife, you know, being one of those biggest, you know, being part of those biggest turning points in life, you know.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Me growing up, I have always been very comfortable expressing my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
All of my life. I have never had an issue. I have never felt judged by other people. But it's interesting to know that there are a lot of men out there that don't do that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting and very, like, I just don't believe it, because once again, I have always expressed, always, every single time since I was a kid up until now, I always say what I have in my mind, what I have, how I feel about things. And even with I mean, I can see it, like, for example, my dad and maybe my brother, maybe older generations, they had a hard time expressing how they were feeling, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays, I think it's a little bit different, where the younger generation is more able to express. I can see how a lot of people in my generation are a little bit more comfortable expressing their emotions.
Yeah. I think maybe, because of, you figure too, when the 81, when I joined the Marine Corps, nothing was going on in the world. The Cold War ended, and life was good. I mean, granted, in the mid 80s we had Grenada and Lebanon, small conflict. We didn't have anything really until 91, when we started the air campaign in Kuwait, to push the Iraqis back. But so I think that when you join the military, when me specifically joined the military, it was like there was nothing to make me express any emotions. Like, I'm a Marine, I'm a badass, and go through that, and then reality all of a sudden hits, and it's like, hey, now that you're in combat, and nowadays military, I don't care what the service is, nowadays nobody's afraid to show, when you figure we did 14 years of combat, whether it be in Iraq or Afghanistan. And nowadays, military members are not afraid to show their emotions. I don't know if it was just, like I said, from back in the 80s, because there was nothing going on. So it was that mentality. Vietnam was well over with. So some of the leadership that I had were people from the Vietnam War. And I knew that what they went through affected them, but they wouldn't show it.
Right.
So it's a different time these days, I guess, with everything going on. Not to mention you have the media embedded with the military too. We had media right there in Iraq with us. So it's hard to hide anything.
Right.
So people are going to see, a Marine crying or a soldier crying because their friend just got shot. A guy that they may have known this guy for only a month, but when you get that close-knit unit, you're a band of brothers, then it doesn't matter how long you've known them. You rely on each other. And so with the media embedded and all, it was hard to hide an emotion.
Yeah.
So I think it's more open now.
Yeah, because like you say, that Vietnam, Cold War, there were not that many, the media was not so there on your face that they were able to capture everything that they were seeing.
Yeah.
Because it was the first time in Afghanistan, the Iraq war, that they were right there in combat with you, right?
Oh,
the
yeah.
was right there riding on the tanks with you guys. And
oh, yeah. In our operations center, when we would brief General Mattis, we had a screen that had our brief on it. The other screen had a live feed from CNN.
Yeah, yeah.
And to see what other units were doing in different areas, like up in northwestern Iraq. What was the Army doing? So we had that going the whole time.
Wasn't that like an issue at the very beginning with that, right?
Yeah.
It was like I remember it was like a big deal what they were doing.
It was a very big
They were
issue.
kind of like, dude, like...
Because the biggest thing we were talking about was like intel and everything.
Right.
So granted, they would do the delay. So what you were seeing in the United States might have been, 12, 18 hours old. What we were seeing was a couple hours old,
Okay.
And like Saddam's, when both of his sons were killed, I knew about it from CNN before I knew it from my command.
That's
and
crazy,
I was there.
Dude.
I was there, so it's wild.
That is crazy.
So,
let me put a pause on this really quick. So the war in Iraq. How do you feel about the whole situation after they left Iraq or Afghanistan. What was it? A year ago, 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whatever that was.
Yeah. Yeah. That situation, 2 years ago, not the way it should have been done. Not the way it should have been done. And unfortunately, 13 military members lost their lives on the last day there. I loved in San Clemente, where I live, they have a bridge, and they still have the 13 flags flying there to commemorate the people that were killed that 2 years ago.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
I mean, I wasn't aware that 13 members.
Yeah. Yeah, so the 13 military members, I think all but one were Marines and then one soldier. Or no, 11 Marines, I believe it is, one soldier, one Navy person. But they are all from the majority of them, the Marines, I think, were from Camp Pendleton area. So August 26th is when they were killed. So,
2 years ago.
Yeah, it's been 2 years now.
2021. And it's got to be so frustrating, man. For people like you, and I'm sure a lot of people that, friends of yours, that were in that battle,
mm-hmm.
and then the way it ended.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's kind of, back when I was in, family members and friends would say, so what do you think about us being over there? And I'm like, I took an oath to support and defend and,
right.
Obey the officers and the President of the United States over me. So I'm just going to keep my opinion to myself.
Absolutely.
That's my job. Do I want to be there? No. Anybody who says, well, I don't mind going, you're an idiot. It's like we don't want to be in conflict, obviously. If we have to, we have to. So then back then, when I was active duty, I wouldn't answer the question. Like, I have no opinion. I'm doing my job.
Right.
Right. And then when I look back and it's like, do you have an opinion? And I'm still like, yeah, but I pretty much think I'm still going to keep it to myself.
Yeah.
There's still that loyalty to, my brothers and sisters that are serving and have served.
Right.
And sometimes it's just some things are best left unsaid.
No, I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Like you say, it's that loyalty that you have.
Yeah.
Towards, it's the career that you had, that it made the person that you are now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It created Mark, for such a long time. So it's I can totally understand. I can totally understand why your position is about when it comes down to this.
And I try to just make everything like a lesson learned. I'll say, when I was teaching at the high schools, we talk about all the history, all the conflicts the Marine Corps had been in, because it was a Marine Corps Junior ROTC, and to include Iraq. None of the kids were born for 9/11 when 9/11 happened. And I know it's crazy. What, tomorrow's going to be 22 years already since 9/11. Yeah. So tomorrow is September 11th, and so my high school kids weren't even born. And I'm like, 9/11 to you is like Pearl Harbor was to me. I wasn't around then, but then I learned about it.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's nuts. But I take everything as a lesson learned. And like even my job now as a contractor, I work with a total of like 20 other contractors, and myself and my boss are the only ones that have seen combat. And so the younger guys that did 4 or 8 years in the Marine Corps but got out recently in the last 5 years, I'll say, were like, what was it like? And so use it as a lessons learned, not as a statement, I'll say.
Right. And it is true, because like you said, a lot of people in this case, like when your family would ask you about how do you feel about this, how do you feel about that, everybody obviously has their opinion, about everything. And I do remember when I was younger, I was in my 20s when the whole situation happened.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, they are my opinions, but I think you are the very first Marine that I have become friends with,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like anybody and not just a Marine, anybody that has been in the military in general. I don't recall.
Yeah.
I don't think I know anyone.
Well, we've known each other for
Was it 15 years?
15 years, yeah.
now? Shit, man,
It's
it's been
a long
minute.
time.
and just getting to know you and your wife, and as you start to grow older, you're starting to mature. You start to understand. Like you say right now. It's like it's a lesson, right?
Yeah.
It's like it happens,
Yeah.
and you just have to roll with it. What else can you do?
Exactly. It's
Whether it fits right, whether it fits wrong, whether you support it, whether you support it. In this, like you say, like having to, like because of that promise that you made to your country,
yeah.
To your brothers, and then not use that, just understanding that commitment that you guys have amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
Right? That is not, you're not going there because of your own personal, decision. It's because obviously there's rankings and there's orders that you follow.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not like I'm going to say, hey, what do you guys want to do today? I want to go to Iraq and, start ducking.
Right. Right. And I'm like, how do you explain that to people? How do you explain it to a lot of people that are kind of like maybe be in the opposite side of, that way, that like the opposite of the street, that they're looking at it in maybe the wrong way or whatever they think,
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's not that understanding of what you guys go through, that once again, that commitment, that part, that how do you say
Camaraderie.
camaraderie, that you guys build
Yeah.
in so many years.
Oh
And
God, it's crazy. It's so big, I mean, the military life, and then especially when you throw combat in there, the camaraderie that you have, they're not, like I said earlier, like I've told you before, they're not friends. They're my family. They're my extended family. I have my wife and my kids and my grandkids and my siblings and my mom, but that's cool. That's my immediate family. This is my extended family, and just like my immediate family, there's nothing I wouldn't do for them. They're my brothers. We ate together, we fought together, we defended together, we deployed together. It's just we know each other. Like you end up knowing some of your comrades there as much as you know yourself. You really do.
Right.
And you're not, there is no shyness on what you do or what you say. You respect a chain of command like any job would. I don't care if you work for Google. You're not going to go straight to the CEO. There's a process, and the same thing with the military. But it's funny because you could be a 2-year, let's say, Lance Corporal rank and be fighting with a 20-year gunny. If something happens to him, you're going to save his butt, and vice versa. He could have been from, Des Moines, and you from Southern California, and you didn't know each other until 2 months ago, but you're relying on each other. So the camaraderie and that you build, and trust and preservation and all, and in everybody is just unsurpassed.
Yeah. On the first episode that I did with Cassidy, she talks a little bit about one of her first boyfriends was a Marine,
Mm-hmm.
and apparently they were deployed, and one of his buddies apparently lost his legs,
Mm-hmm.
and this guy saves his life, carries him to whatever, take care of him, and after that he literally moved to live with him, to take care of him. Once they moved here, he was like, he felt like that was his responsibility.
Yeah.
To take care of him. I don't know how long that lasted. I think that might have lasted about a year, but he had that commitment.
Yeah.
And that need of, this is my brother.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take care of him. And I think that's like, once again, that is something that you can only develop in those kind of circumstances, right? When your life is in danger, when you're threatened, when the worst can happen to you, you develop this bond with someone, and not just one person, right? A lot of them.
Yeah.
And you become like,
we sit in a circle.
Forever bonded.
Yeah. We sit in a circle and we eat with each other. We share our food. It's like, what do you got here? And what are we going to talk about? If we're deployed, we're going to talk about back home. We're going to talk about our family, and we get to know each other. Me as a senior enlisted, the Marines that were directly underneath me, I knew everybody that was married, how many kids they had, how long they'd been married, when their birthday was, things like that. Anything that on a personal side to get to know them. If they're feeling down, because they're away from their family, for example, for their birthday, well, I'm going to try and bring you up, take you under my wing. Just like they did that, when I was like that, when I first came in, we didn't have the way to communicate like we do now when I first came in. Obviously, if I spent my first couple of years overseas in Okinawa, and granted, like I said before, there's no conflict and all, but you're still away from family. And even that can draw like a post-traumatic stress, being away from family the first time, especially for a young kid that's 18 years old and right out of high school, And so you, even over there, like in Okinawa, you bond with your fellow Marines. We might go out to the field and do some training for a week. Okay, that's a week that we're really going to get to know each other, and rely on each other. And you just carry it with you. And it's when you do that, like you made mention earlier, they're going to go through life, even like the high school students. You're going to have Marines that go through life. I have a number of Marines that I have the utmost respect for and look up to that influenced me. They were a big influence in my career. That retired before me. They were senior enlisted as I was coming up the ranks. A guy named Dwight Bowman on the East Coast. He was a master sergeant. He got promoted to master gunny too, but I had the utmost respect for this guy. My former senior drill instructor, I still keep tabs with him. He was my senior drill instructor in 1981, and when I became a drill instructor in 87, he was there still. So I got to work with the guy that made me what I am. But you just get that bond, that utmost respect for those around you. And with him, because my dad had been in a motorcycle accident and all right before I went to boot camp, he made note of that. And so in boot camp, he was always checking as my senior drill instructor on my welfare. But then you move the clock forward, 6 years later, and the first time I saw him, he was like, "How's your dad? What's the status on him? When was the last time you saw him? Is he going to come down here where I get to see him?" And it's like, you remember that. After all these years, I haven't seen you, but you remembered that. And so you get that bond, And I was like, hopefully that works with me, And then one day, sure enough, I'm at the golf course, and a guy walks up, and he extends his hand and introduces himself. And I'm like, and he says, "Mr. Coates." And I'm like, "All right, I'm at a loss here. You have the advantage on me." And he says, "I'll give you a hint." And he blurted off some names. And I went, "Oh, okay. Platoon 2051. He goes, "Yes, sir. You're my drill instructor." I'm like, and my friend that I was golfing with, this was at San Juan Hills Golf Course. This was right before COVID, 2019.
I recall that. I remember you came in. You told me about that story.
And I'm like, that guy was 1988. And the guy still saw me on the golf course and remembered. Of course, I still had a flat top back then, but
Nowadays, with your hair like this, you think a lot of people might be able to recognize you?
some have. Some of my high school students have that graduated back in. I got a guy that graduated back in at my first high school, who's now a E6, a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps. He recognized me. I got some people at Camp Pendleton that graduated around 2013, 14. They recognized me. So yeah, it's amazing.
Wow, that is so cool. I mean, I mean, how many people you have changed their lives?
Oh God.
You know, I mean, I remember, for example, I remember my high school teacher. You know, I remember one of my high school teachers. You know, she was always so patient and telling me, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I still remember her, right? I mean, it was minimal things, you know, that didn't really shape my life. You know, I mean, I remember she wanted me to, the one thing I do remember a lot is that she wanted me to, I remember back in the days, this is 1996, 95, and I remember Marilyn Manson back then, it was like big, right? And I was into that kind of music. All of my friends were into like metal and rock and kind of like gothic type of thing. And I remember she hated it. She hated that I liked Marilyn Manson. And she even, because I'm still so malleable, you know, I'm like 15, 16. So she's like, I need you to bring those CDs to me. And I was like, okay. So I remember bringing them to her. She's like, I'm not going to give this to you. I don't know until when. Anyway, she never ended up giving it to me. I was like, okay, I'm just going to go buy another one. I'm like, it's not going to make a difference, you know. Anyways, use what I'm saying is just like how someone, you know, it's wants to help you in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Because for her, in her mind, that was bad, you know. I remember she was very...
But the influence they have on you years later.
Man, absolutely.
It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. You will always remember that person because you think back now. Now I think back and it's... Well, that person wanted to help me.
Yeah.
She was not doing it in a malicious way. That person wanted to help me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in my head, that's the way I see it now. It's like, it's not that she wanted me to be a bad man, or she probably thought that I was going to be kind of want to turn into, you know, the gothic Satan and all these things that I'm like, it never turned out the way, you know. But just her want to shape certain little things in my life now are like, I look back and I'm like, well, she came from a good part, from a good place in her heart, you know. She wanted me to shape in a good way. But what I mean, that's something relatively small compared to that kind of work that you were doing with these kids. You know, it's like a completely different ball game. I mean, these guys, they will forever remember who Mark Coates was. Yeah.
It's like you. I had I think my first person that I look back at as inspirational was my 5th grade teacher. And you know, you can be a teacher, but do you have a vested interest really in your students? And there was 2 things about her that hit me. One was, she says, "You're the first person I ever gave an F to." And she felt really genuinely bad. She had a tear in her eyes when she took me outside the classroom to teach that. I felt kind of honored, you know, in a sarcastic way. But then during the summer, I was playing Little League Baseball, and I would ride my bike to the ballpark, and it was a little ways. And one day I was just not feeling good, and I stopped, and I was sitting on the curb in front of this neighborhood. Unbeknownst to me, it was her house. And she saw me out there and came out and saw me, and I guess I looked flush, whatever, and she felt my forehead and brought me immediately into the house, put me on the couch, made some soup. I fell asleep. I had 104 fever. She still had the information on my mom, you know, to contact her and say, I have Mark here in my house and blah, 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 you know. But I'm like, that's, you know, it went beyond the classroom, you know, it took a genuine interest in me. And so I always made, like, in the Marine Corps, take a genuine interest in my Marines, you know, like I said about their dates that are important, their family members, how they're feeling, hey, we can get it. If I notice anything, all right, come on, let's talk. What does it to make you, what do I need to do to make you feel better? What do we need to do to get through this? It's not a you thing. How can I get you through this? No, it's a we. We're going to go through it as a group, as a team. My students, the same way. I can give you an A, I can give you a B, that doesn't matter. But do I have a vested interest on when you leave this high school, what you're going to do? Absolutely. I really do. And so that's why a lot of my students I would keep in touch with. It's like, I'm in the Marine Corps now. I don't know. I've been to a couple of their weddings. I've seen some babies. I've been to a couple of their graduations from basic training in the Marine Corps. I've seen them get promoted in the Marine Corps. I got one as recently as day before yesterday. He and his parents contacted me and said, hey, we're celebrating his 22nd birthday. You want to join us here in Carlsbad? And it's like, and he was one of my high school students, and crazy.
How does that make you feel? Like, how did you ever, did that ever cross your head that you were going to make such an impact on kids?
Not before, but when I heard about this, being a teacher, I was a gunny on the East Coast, and one of my colleagues was going to do it. He was retiring and was going to do it in Florida. I'm like, tell me about it. And he did, and I kept it in the back of my head for the next 11 years because I stayed in the Marine Corps. And then when I took on the ROTC instructor, I planned it right when I got back from my third tour in Iraq, and I knew I was going to retire. I immediately did all the paperwork to get my certification for it right away. I made it a priority. That way I got hired on with my first school the day after my retirement. And I guess that's what it was, because the guy that I worked with before, he's like, I just want to make an impact. I don't care if my attitude was like the same. I want to make an impact, and if I impact one or if I impact 100, I made an impact, and it might help somebody hopefully makes them have a better life. My ROTC students, I had a 100% graduation rate.
Wow.
100%. So anyone that came in my program, and all of my seniors, I ensured graduate. I had some that struggled. I had some that, for example, I had a student that he had gauges in his ears. He was with a wrong crowd. He thought he got his girlfriend pregnant, and he came and he was in my class, one of my students, and he literally opened himself up and started crying on my shoulder. My parents don't like my girlfriend. Her parents don't like me, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, all right. And he wanted to go in the Marine Corps. Showed him the ropes. He's been in the Marine Corps now for 13 years. He's stationed here at Camp Pendleton. He's a staff sergeant. He just got back from a 6-month tour in Kuwait. He's doing great things. And it's like, okay, it just, that one, you're not going to get a lot at a time, but if you can do one at a time, I guess.
No, I totally agree with you. I remember when I first arrived here. I want to say I arrived in 94. I want to say this was probably 95. I was a sophomore. So 95, close to 96. And I got myself in trouble. When you're a teenager, they always...
No.
A little bit. Dude, like the person that I am now, even when you guys first met me, like, I was nothing. I was 14 and we were in high school. And I remember one of the other kids brings a taser. I never seen a taser in my life before. I don't even know what that thing does. All I can hear like tick, 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 and I'm like, and I see like these little blue things coming together. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, it shocks you. I'm like, all right, cool. So then we're all starting to like shock each other on the stomach. We're like, oh yeah, that feels good. So we're like playing all tough. So we're fucking having fun. We're like, oh, cool, trying to see who's the toughest. You're like, oh yeah, I'll take it. Anyway, so I'm like, okay, so this must be normal. You know, everybody can bring a freaking taser to school. Like, we're fine, cool, you know, whatever. This is like, so first period starts. We'll go to school. We'll go to to our classroom. Third period, I will never forget Mrs. Zimmerman, math class. There's the guy that had that taser with him. There's another guy that was, you know, good friends with. And I see him, and I'm like, oh, this guy has a taser. I want to go get it. So I get up in the middle of the class, go towards her seat. I'm like, hey, where's the taser? He's like, oh, it's right here. I'm like, okay, so I grabbed it. Once again, I don't know what a taser is. I mean, I know it shocks you. I don't know how bad it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher sees me. And she kind of like went to the side to see what I had in my hands, and she saw it. And I'm like walking towards another kid because I was going to shock him on the neck. So as I'm walking, I have a taser in my hands, and I go. I was getting close to this guy. She goes, "What do you have in your hands?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing." And she's like, "Give it to me." And I'm like, I don't have anything. So I get close to another guy that was, I saw his backpack open. So I get close to him and I dropped it. I'm like, here, just keep it. Like, okay. So he closes his backpack. I'm like, I don't have anything. And so I go up like this, like, I don't have anything.
Right.
And she immediately goes to the phone, calls security. And I go and I sit down and I'm like, oh, why is going on? Like, why is this such a big deal? Security comes in. And she points at me and at the other guy that there were three of us. The guy that gave me the taser, me, and the guy that I put that taser on his backpack.
Oh,
dude. So we're taking to. I literally were riding on the little car behind the little car to the main office. Like, what's going on? What's happening, dude? I almost got expelled from school.
Oh no.
Police was there. Took us, you know, I had to do a statement, and I'm just like, what did I get myself into? Like, I had no idea of what a freaking taser is. And I never seen one in Mexico. I'm sure they exist. I just never saw one, and I've been around one, but here apparently it was a big deal. I'm like, what do you mean you cannot have fun with these things? So anyway, so that I go that day. I didn't leave school until like 4:00 because, like I said, I had to read to have a written statement of what happened. School, it's over. Everybody's going to school, and I think I left school like maybe half an hour after it, and I'm like walking. I will never forget that walk, the longest mile, you know, mile and a half, I think, from school to my house. I'm walking. I'm going like, what? I think I messed up, you know. As I'm walking into my into the parking where we lived, and I see my parents just literally like almost running into the car. They want to come and get me, and they see me, and my dad just puts me inside the car. He just rips me a new one, man. He just goes off on me, you know.
Yeah.
And he goes, like, "What are you thinking?" This and I was like, "Oh, all right, I think I messed up, you know, whatever." Go to juvenile hall. I didn't go to juvenile hall, but I did have to go to juvenile court.
Mm-hmm.
And anyways, I ended up going to the community service for like 3 months. Holy shit, man!
You terror.
I was. Anyways, so what my point is I remember we you know how they take you to clean up like the parks and clean up graffiti and stuff like that. I was always very well behaved because I mean I was not a bad person. I was just hanging out with the wrong people, right?
Right.
Like usual. So I don't remember the name. I don't remember the park, to be honest. But we were walking, cleaning, whatever, and then we're like walking back. And I remember we always carried this cooler with water. And I'm talking to one of the guys, and everybody that is there is, I mean, they're like gang members and you know, like shaved head, tattoos and stuff like that. And I'm just like wearing a Joe Cool shirt, which is Snoopy, you know. And that was my nickname, Joe Cool.
Joe Cool.
Joe Cool. And I'm like walking around in the park, And there's girls, and I say something to the other guy in Spanish about a girl. And the RPO hear me. He heard what I said. And he goes, everybody stop. And we're like, it's like, stop. Like, what's going on? He comes to my face. He goes, you, what did you say? And I'm like, I didn't say anything. He goes, I'm not stupid. I can understand what you said. What the fuck did you say? And I'm like, oh, well, I said this, I repeated it. And he goes, what the hell are you thinking? He goes, how stupid are you? And I'm just like, he goes, do you think that your parents do you think that they have to go and pretty much like pay for your for the stupid thing that you do? He goes, they have to go in front of the judge and show their faces for all the stupid things that you have done. You think it's fair? Do you think it's fair? And I'm like, it's like, think before you do or say something. I will never forget that guy. And if I ever happen to, maybe you can help me find like this guy. His last name was Ramsey. That's all I know. And he had to be like 5'2", but that guy was built like a rock. And he goes, like I said, he goes, think before you do anything.
Yeah.
Because don't be stupid.
Yeah.
That changed my life.
Good point.
Just him saying those words, I was like, you're right. Like, you're right. Like, my parents, it's not fair for them to be having to go to court and having to put up with all of this stuff because of my actions. Even though I was 15, 16, I was like, okay, I'm taking this very seriously. Anyways, I will not forget the last day. And once again, because I was always on time. I was always doing whatever they told me.
Yeah.
So there would be times where there were like a lot of kids, and there was always two bands, and they would always call a third one for all the extra people. And they would put on the third band, they would put all the well-behaved, all the good kids in a sense, and they would just drive around the city, like going to clean graffiti, but we never cleaned anything. We just rode on the van for hours, had lunch, ride again, go watch the bands, and that was it. So I was always on that van. Whenever there was a lot of extra kids, and they would call a third one, I was always on that van, always. And I will never forget that last time, my last day of community service. They go alphabetical order, right? And I'm C, so
you're early on.
Yeah. This guy calls Mr. Ramsey again. He calls everybody, and he leaves me at the end. And I was like, well, I'm thinking I'm not going. It's my last day. I cannot wait to get out of here. I'm done. And I'm the last one. And he goes, Mr. Cruz, get over here. I'm like, yes, sir. He shakes my hand and he goes, I hope I will never see you again in this place.
Absolutely.
He goes, you're a good kid. He goes, let's have a wonderful day.
It worked, didn't it?
Bro.
Look at you now, man.
Like I said, it changed my life.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how that little bit of guidance, it can change your life forever. Because I was starting to hang out with the wrong people. Because my parents, they didn't have time. They were working.
Yeah.
My mom working, my dad working. So you start to be like, I can do pretty much whatever I want. Right?
Yep.
Like, going, stealing things from like Vons or Ross and like small little things, but small little things back, start to turn into bigger things later on in life. You start to feel like, I can get away with this. I can get away with anything.
Right.
But that cannot be the case, that cannot be the case in many instances. So that, man, like I said, I always keep him in my head. Like, I would love to find him and be like, you know what? It's been 1996, 95, 96. So it's going to be like 28.
You shake his hand, you give him a hug, and you say, thank you, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would love to do that. I would love to do that. I would love to see, and say something to him to that extent. I don't know how many people have ever done that, but to him. But for me, it's like something I would like to do that because It changed my life.
I
For the
think
better,
everybody
man.
needs like a role model like that. You know, like when I was a high school teacher, I had a picture of my mom and I was in uniform. She came to my last Marine Corps ball. I invited her and my dad and my brother and his wife. And I have a picture, one of my favorites, of me dancing with my mom. And she's looking up with me, and all you see in the picture is love to my mom and pride to her son. You know, and my students would see that, and they're like, "Hey, sir, what's that?" I'm like, "That's my mother." And I'm telling you right now, you all don't have to love your parents. You don't have to love the decisions they make, but they make it for the good of you. So you need to respect them. I said, any chance you get, you dance with your mother. I said, ladies, that goes with you too. Women dance, you dance with your mother, you know. I said, because they don't do anything. There is no book on parenting. You know, they do what they can with the tools they have. I said, beyond that, make sure, you know, I'd always tell them, don't go to stupid places with stupid people and do stupid things. And when you go through life, make sure you do what you love and love what you do. Dance with your mom and those other two, and life will be good.
And sometimes all they need is to hear it.
Yeah.
Just to hear it.
Yeah.
You know, once again, like they might not have the nobody does have the perfect parents to begin with.
Nope.
But once again, parents may not know how to express certain things. Right?
Exactly.
So when they hear from somebody else, they'll be like, it just clicks. It just clicks in your head. You like, that's all I need to hear.
Yep.
And that will change your whole life.
Yeah. I tell them, you want to see the best of your parents when you get older, the best of your significant other, then give the best of you.
Well,
You know, it'll come around.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I totally agree with you, my friend. Mr. Mark, thank you very much, brother.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, buddy.
I appreciate you coming, and we're going to do this again eventually.
Okay.
But thank you for taking the time of your day and coming over and sharing with me, you know, these experiences. And I'm sure there's many more stories that one day you if you ever want to share them, you're more than welcome.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
All right, brother.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, brother.
You too.